3, 2, 1.
Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome back to Potterthon 12, raising money for Doctors Without Borders and the Trevor Project. Incredibly, since I've been away, we've managed to raise $1,635. It'd be super cool if we could hit $2,000 before the end of the event, so if you haven't already, please do consider donating. Currently, we still have one incentive active at the moment, which is for the next one, which is to name Skillet's character in Hogwarts Legacy. This is on the Trevor Project campaign, so if you'd like to donate to that and name Skillet's character, you can do so by donating $25 to the Trevor Project campaign. Now, we have a very exciting run, a run that many people thought I was doing at first because of some slight technical complications, but no, I am not nowhere near as skilled as this. I'm going to hand you over now to our Lowcast extraordinaire, Mr. Ratburn. Hello, sir.
Hello, that would be me. Excited to be here. I'm ready to start whenever, but it should be a pretty fun run to go through. Hopefully it's interesting to people.
And are you going to explain your personal incentive, or are you going to do that once the run gets going?
I figured I would just do that once the run is going.
Yep, that's all good. If you're ready to start, then we can get you going.
Sure, let's go.
Alright then, we will start in 3, 2, 1, go, go, go. Good luck.
Yep. So, I guess just to give an initial overview of the run, you might realize from the name, the point of Lowcast is we want to complete this game using as few spellcasts as possible. Though it's slightly different from any percent, we actually follow the rules of the warpless category for this run, which means we aren't going to be warping or doing the Rictus-Skipra strat. Basically, that's just sort of an arbitrary rule because we wanted to actually do all of the levels in the run. Did my first cast there, which is kind of unavoidable, and then messed up boosting up here because I have my cursor misplaced after moving there. So we're using a lot of the standard techniques if you've seen other runs of this, like brightness boosting is a pretty common one. So, going into the incentive that Miney mentioned there, this run is somewhat difficult and easy to choke at certain points, but I still want to be able to show off all of the strats. So what I'm planning to do is I have some save states prepared at a few particularly difficult points, and if I can't get past a strat within basically the target time that I'm intending for sticking to the estimate, then I will use one of those to be able to show off the strat. But for each of the places where I get stuck, if I have to use the save states for that place, then I'm planning to donate $20. So it's a bit of an incentive. I'm hoping I don't actually have to do that, which I guess sounds a bit bad to say I hope I don't have to donate to charity, but I'd like to get a complete and fully valid run if possible, which I think is likely based on the no reset attempts I've done in practice, but we'll see. This is a high variance category. Out of the practice runs I've done, the best I think was about 30 seconds behind world record, and the worst was almost an hour behind. So we'll see how things go. So far, not much interesting done specifically in terms of skipping casts, relatively standard stuff. Just we boosted up the staircase there to get a little faster, but it's not like you would need spell casts to get up here anyways. So, starting here with the Rictus-Skipra spell learning, again, not a particularly exciting part of the run, just kind of doing arrow keys, and hopefully I don't get a fake input, which you might have heard about in previous runs. Sometimes it will just register as you doing the wrong thing here, even when you aren't, but that just loses a bit of time, and it doesn't matter a whole lot for the run. And I see in the chat asking, spell learning does not count as a spell, right? Yes, that is correct. And also, it's a bit later in the run, but shooting like the weird sword energy beams when fighting the basilisk, that also does not count as a spell. And also another clarification related to the rules on that. The spells are counted in accordance with essentially the final number of spells on the route, so like if you die or load from a save, then any spells before that don't count. It goes back to where it was when you took the save that you reloaded from. So it's not quite completely hardcore. So we're about to come on to the first sort of real trick of the run. As soon as we actually load into the Rictusempra level here, you can see there's a crab, which normally we would have to cast on. We're going to do a little bit of a manipulation, basically by getting the crab's attention at the right time and then hiding from it. The way that it actually works with this particular type of crab, basically what it's going to do is after it fires and then we hide from it, it's going to move perpendicular relative to the line between Harry and the crab. And if you're observant, you may think, well, there are two ways to go perpendicular. Which one do the crabs go? In this case, the way that the crab chooses which way to go is effectively that it goes in whichever direction would bring it closer to the origin coordinate of the level, like the 0, 0, 0 location, which is around here, basically, for this particular level, but from our perspective, it's pretty much just a random spot in the level, which is totally arbitrary, and that actually affects which directions we can manipulate crabs to go in when they're on that type of crab AI. But I guess the crabs are sort of like those types of birds that have like magnets in their head and can detect absolute directions somehow. So now we are at a notorious trick for people who have seen this run before. Basically, we need to pick up this gnome so that we can try to use it to block some bars from closing. Let's see if I can get a good position here before taking the save, ideally. I don't want to go too far and have the bars close behind me. That should be good. So yeah, this is one of the most RNG parts of this run, but hoping it'll work. I don't think that's good enough, and also I messed up the pausecast, so that wouldn't have worked even if it actually was good enough. But basically, I want the gnome to run forward slightly, and then I want to pausecast it. That was just like slightly too forward, and now I can't aim at it, but we'll see. Maybe if I get lucky, it'll walk back into my aim. But I want to cast on it twice, and then get it to block those bars from closing when some stuff happens. I don't think that's a good enough position. Yeah, that wouldn't have worked even if I had done different timing. So, I have a few minutes to spare before I give up and use a save state for this, so we'll see how it goes. Basically, depending on exactly where the gnome walks, I might try to do it with different amounts of delay or directions. That there was no way that specific position was going to work, even if I had done a different delay. But this should work. No, it's too far again. I might have, like, thrown it too well that it ended up a bit far and easy to not be able to aim at. But yeah, if it walks into a usable position, then it is possible to actually get it to block those bars from closing. And let's see, that is not a useful position. So yeah, as you can picture, this is more than a little bit RNG. In a serious run for record, I would have reset by now. Also, that attempt definitely would have worked if I had timed it better, but I didn't. That's never gonna work. Yes. But yeah, basically, depending on the exact position that the gnome is in, you need to, like, delay things differently. And that was close to working, but I think just didn't quite make it. Let's see. Okay, that would have worked if I cast it faster. Or So yeah, we'll give this a few more attempts before I give up and use the save, but I'd like to be able to make this actually happen if possible. That was so close. But unfortunately, I'm not playing absolutely perfectly. Also, nearly close. I think I have like 1 more minute to spare, maybe. Let's see. Nope. Just going to adjust my comparison because somehow it ended up comparing against some of best instead of against the target splits. But you can't see that, so it doesn't really matter to you. Okay. So yeah, this is obviously a big reset point for the run, and as you can imagine, it's very easy to lose a lot of time here if you're just going for only casts and not resetting when you miss the strat. What? I did not even see well what happened there. I thought that I had gone at a reasonable time, but it seems that it didn't even, like, hit. And that barely didn't work. I have like 30 seconds left before I'm gonna give up on this. As to the question in chat, am I doing Bowtruckle Boost? Yes, I will be doing Bowtruckle Boost, and we'll see how much time I can fill there, but that's going to, with the version I'm doing, be like 15 minutes of basically just staring at a Bowtruckle and getting repeatedly hugged by it. Okay. I unfortunately have to call this one at this point. So let's see if I can get this reasonably well from the save state. Okay. Got it. First try from that save state, so that's essentially what it is supposed to be. And we are now on 3 casts, and the run is now invalid. Which, I'm not super surprised that it ended up that way, and that's $20 so far. Hopefully we won't need any more, but let's see where this goes. We're coming up now on the 4th spellcast of the run. Can't really avoid casting on that bar there. There are some theories about ways that we could do weird boosts to get around it, but nobody's managed to come up with a way that actually works to save a cast for that. And then we're going to get up to 10 casts here, sorry, with the 6 additional casts on this relatively incorrigible room where we're just casting on this very easy puzzle to make Lockhart's portraits align, and that is like basically 1/8 of the casts in the entire category just for that one extremely simple puzzle that we simply can't get past. So I'm bringing this gnome with me past the first trick we used it for because we actually need it for a second trick, which is coming up as I bring this gnome up to the next area. So we'll see if I can get this in good time. This should be usually a first try trick, but might miss it due to nervousness or something. So what I want to do here is basically throw this gnome with the right timing as that gate that's supposed to trap us in is going to come down. And then I want to actually make the gnome in midair again block this gate from falling. So let's see if I can do that. Nice. Okay, so that worked well. And now we're basically out of the Ictocenter level. So I just have to boost up here into this weird little trigger that lets us leave. So now going to the bonus bean room, and I actually do want to collect a number of beans here so that I can buy some potion ingredients, because I'm going to have to make a lot of potions for this run. So let's see, it looks like I got the slower RNG. So I'm going to do a trick here, which I think you saw in the all chests run, where I'm going to pause the timer, which basically allows me to stay in this room collecting beans for as long as I want until I unpause it. And I'm going to collect about 250 beans here so that I can buy 2 pairs of potion ingredients, because the Wigan Tree Bark costs 75 beans and the Mucus costs 50 beans. So just basically take a nice little route here. I did note at the beginning of the level which RNG I had. It can be basically faster or slower. I think it's like 10 versus 20 seconds or something. I don't know exactly what it is, but using that I can optimize a little bit, because I know when exactly I need to unpause in order to continue the timer, so that I don't waste time after I've gotten to 250 beans. So for now, just casually collecting some more beans as I go through this wonderful map full of free jelly beans. I can unpause around here. I'll go a bit later just to be extra safe since it's a marathon run. But yeah, plenty of time, and I'm almost at 250 beans here. And now, after having left, I'm going to go do the first trade to buy 2 of the potion ingredients. The 2 Wigan Tree Bark here that I mentioned before. The trader here can buy RNG, have somewhere between 2 and 4 ingredients. Since I'm only buying 2 pairs in the way this route works, there's no chance that they won't have enough ingredients. I accidentally just dragged the side of the window, that's unfortunate, but I think it should be fine as it is. So I'm buying 2 pairs here, and then saying no after that. They kind of just go in random directions for where that drops, and sometimes those NPC girls who are running around can end up like running on top of the bark, which doesn't really matter, but it's mildly amusing. So now, after buying that Wigan Tree Bark, we're going to enter into Quidditch, which we're just kind of riding around on a broom doing practice, and don't even have a wand to use, so there's not really much to do in terms of this run. So we'll just, I guess, sit through this and do it the same way you pretty much would do it in any other run. So we're just like waiting on this little bar in the bottom right to fill up as we sit through this auto-scroller. If you've watched older Lowcast runs, including the one I did at Potterthon like 4 years ago, you might remember that there were a bunch of Quidditch matches that I did. In that case, that was an older version of the route in which we wanted a lot of beans and were basically collecting house points, but thankfully that's been routed out and there's no longer any reason to go spend a bunch of time playing Quidditch, so we don't have quite as much boring Quidditch in this version of the route, just the normal practice that you have in pretty much any category. I say pretty much because there are a few category extensions like Fungus or New Game Plus where you wouldn't do it. Now we're going to Potions class, where once we do this class we unlock the ability to actually brew the potions. We're going to get a pair of ingredients from a chest here, which we need to cast on, so that's going to be the 11th spellcast of the game. And then that's going to get us up to 3 Wigan Tree Bark and 1 Mucus. And normally we would lose the Wigan Tree Bark and Mucus used to make the potion here. I'm going to try to do a trick where I basically just leave the classroom. Normally Snape would be like, "Where are you going? Get back here." But there's actually a small gap between the triggers there, so you can just leave in the middle of the potions class. Now, the purpose of actually doing that is so that I can leave the map and then use F4 to basically hide the UI elements from the screen, and then if I re-enter the map with that F4 state, then when I go to the cauldron and brew the potion, I won't actually lose the ingredients. So I've basically just stolen an extra pair of ingredients from the potions class. And I also won't actually get the potion, but that doesn't really matter because I'm going to be making a lot of potions very soon using a duping glitch with the ingredients. So this is one of the few like PC-dependent strats in this route because I think it's like spamming a log file or something when that happens with the UI gone. So depending on your PC, that can be very slow and just kind of lag the game. I think the first time I tried doing that route, when it was on an older laptop I had that was pretty bad, I ended up just like freezing the game for 2 minutes because I hadn't even tried out the strat before doing it in a run, which was not a great idea. But on my current PC, that thankfully works fine. Now I'm going to buy the last 2 ingredients here, these 2 flobberworm mucus, and that's going to get me up to 3 pairs of ingredients with 2 that I have purchased and 1 that I stole from the potions class. Now I'm going to save here and do the potion duping glitch, where basically we go up and make potions and we're up against a wall, which because of the interesting way that this game works, the wall basically physically blocks the ingredients from flying out of your inventory into the cauldron, so you just get free potions. And we're going to be here for quite a while because I'm aiming to get 99 potions, so another relatively slow part of the run. I guess if there's anything that the host has to say, now would be one good time out of many. Otherwise, we can sit here and enjoy.
I will mention briefly a bit about our charities. So this year we're raising money for 2 charities, and you can choose where the money goes. One of which is our Old Faithful the Trevor Project, which are the leading suicide prevention and crisis intervention organisation for LGBTQ young people. They work to save young lives by providing support for free and confidential suicide prevention and crisis intervention programs on platforms where young people spend most of their time. And Doctors Without Borders is our newcomer to this event. They offer medical humanitarian assistance to people based solely on need, irrespective of race, religion, gender, or political affiliation. Their teams of doctors, nurses, logistical people, and other frontline workers are often among the first on the scene when people's lives are upended by conflict, disease outbreak, or natural or human-made disasters. So, in my opinion, and I think a lot of people would agree, 2 really powerful charities there doing really important work across the world, really. I mean, Trevor Project is a bit more US focused, but Doctors Without Borders obviously go across the world and do some incredible work. And sadly, in the world that we live in now, that sort of work is needed a lot more from various different aspects. So it's very important that charities like MSF or Doctors Without Borders have that support, and we're very proud and honoured to support them at Potterthon 12 and maybe into the future, depending on how things go. We'll see what happens next year, of course. But yeah, 2 really good charities, and as a reminder, you can still donate to name Skillet's Hogwarts Legacy character. That incentive will be closing during the transition, so if you want to name it, $25 to the Trevor Project campaign before the end of this run, which you've still got a fair ways to go, but yeah. Also, I do want to mention, while Ratburn's still duping potions, if you want to know more about this category after the run, of course, please do go check out Portal's Lowcast documentary that he made with a lot of help from the community earlier this year. It does feature Ratburn in it, and I also feature in it, which I was shocked by, given I've never run this category. But yeah, it's got some really cool stuff in there, some good history about the category, and it was a lot of people put work into it. Like, I think close to like 25 people put work into that project, including editors, narrators, and beyond. And it's something that I think is a nice thing to have, and I hope we get more of them from Portal and the community in the future, which I believe the plan is to. So yeah, that's all from me. I'll hand you back over to Mr. Star Trek, who I don't know his name, and I want to be murdered for that. What is his name?
It's Spock. But
I thought it might be Spark.
yep, thank you. That's
the only one I do know.
bailed me out of more time than I expected, to be honest, so we're getting relatively close to done you're paying attention to the screen, you might see that there's this weird Hufflepuff guy who just kind of walks and occasionally watches what we're doing. I guess he finds it very interesting. I mean, it probably is interesting to see this guy just kind of magically making potions out of nothing. But other than that, still not much interesting. Soon we're going to be, after we finish all of this potion duping, we'll just go up into the next spell class, which is Scourge, where we learn the spell that allows you to get rid of weird ghost slime, which is used, if I'm remembering correctly the count, I think only 3 times in this entire run. And it's only needed 2 times to complete the actual game, because you don't actually need it for completing the first one if you're not doing the Warpless rule set, but we are, so we need 1 more. So we'll just go up to this class. My cursor was not at all in the correct direction to boost there, so I'll just take the stairs, I guess. Yeah, I forgot to reset my cursor there after having purchased the potion ingredients, so that is entirely on me. But yeah, we're entering another one of these DDR segments. This is the one where people typically have the most trouble with fake inputs, so we'll see, maybe I'll get one of those. Hopefully not.
To move its way around the symbol. At the exact point when the wand passes over the arrows, you'll need to hit
Coney
the
in
corresponding arrow
Jumpless Run perhaps made a good choice in using the tourney client and just skipping over all of this, but for this run we're doing the real game and doing the especially boring parts that have 0 strats at all. But yeah, once I do get into the Scourge challenge here, it's pretty much just going to be identical to what you would do in a Warpless run or in any percent run. If we were doing any percent Lowcast, then we would actually use a Quidditch Warp to leave the Scourge challenge and just get out of doing it, which is not something you even do in any percent because it's slower than the normal strat to just complete the level. But as it is, we're doing Warpless, and we basically just do the normal any percent strat, but it requires 1 spellcast to get to that point. Theoretically, in the upcoming level, we would have a way to die at the entrance door of the level. We could actually leave, but there just isn't any way that we can find so far that we would get the damage to die at the front door. And also it's kind of questionable how the rules would even apply there, but that's one remote possibility of ideas of how to skip a cast still in this game. But obviously none of the remote ideas have worked out yet, or else they would be in the route. Well, yeah, I mean, ways that involve casts don't count. That's kind of the point. So yeah, what we're doing here, it's just getting into a weird wall walk that lets us fall down into the star. I need to actually skip the cutscene there in order to not die while getting the star, which is something that may occasionally bite you if you're just kind of casually going through and not paying much attention. So now we aren't getting into the second bean bonus room, and we're going to go and enter the Bicorn level, where we are basically going to steal more stuff from Snape now, in this case the powdered Bicorn horn, and we're going through his weird storehouse labyrinth, I guess. There's ectoplasm here, but we can just jump through it, it doesn't matter. We can't avoid casting on that door, so that brings us up to 13 spell casts so far. Here we can just do basically the same thing you would normally do. Okay, that's a medium, so that's not going to work. But yeah, we can just get up here and get across like this. Also could have done a lag jump if I were really trying to go fast, but I would probably have just failed and died. So the strat coming up here, basically you want to get across this bridge. Technically you can also do that with like some weird lag jumping, but what we're going to do is ride this pixie by just bouncing on its head. That was a bit sketchy, but it worked out. Basically, the pixie is aiming for Harry's face, so when Harry's on top of the pixie, it goes upwards, and that gets you upwards. And as long as you can stay on top of it, you end up gaining height, and you can also manipulate it a bit to move across. So, we got through that fast. And now this is a different type of fire crab than the one that we first encountered in Rictusempra. This one uses a different form of AI where basically it shoots, in this case, 2 times and then moves in a particular direction, then shoots 2 more times and moves in the opposite direction. So for this part of the level, you're supposed to just get the fire crabs into these sort of prison cells, and we're just going to make them walk in on their own. So, yeah, they do not really have much of an instinct for staying free, I guess. Yeah, it's one of the easiest tricks to learn in this run, I would say, and it saves quite a few casts, since the normal way that you would be doing this in a speed run would basically be doing Rick 2 and then doing multiple flipendos in a row in order to push them there. So, while it's not particularly difficult, it is a very high reward strat in the sense of the number of casts saved. I'm just going to wait a bit here before I manipulate the snails to go into their prison cells. I'm gonna look backwards to check that it actually goes all the way in, and it went in fine. Let's see, that one does as well. Yep. Okay, now here is the next gnome strat of the run. Let's see if I can get this gnome knocked out relatively quickly. In terms of the way I'm trying to knock out the gnome, I'm basically just letting the gnome hit Harry so that it runs away in a random direction and hoping it goes into the gnome hole and then gets knocked out on the side. I also did a bit of a body block on the gnome there to sort of push it further against the side in order to ensure that it got knocked out. And then I did a trick which was basically just a little hyper jump onto the staircase. Well, onto the gnome by the staircase, using the staircase. And the gnome is just resting on this sort of invisible collision, which they have in a lot of areas of the game, where basically there's collision that blocks creatures like gnomes from moving out of their intended area, but here we're using it to give the gnome a place to sit on while knocked out. Now, I'm bringing another gnome here for a later strat, and just doing the normal wall walk to get here. We're coming up on the 14th spellcast of the run. Another place where we can't really get by without just giving in and doing the switch that you're supposed to do to continue. Now we are nearing a part that I am kind of bad at, where we just have to sort of jump across these things, but there's not really anything special you need to do. You can just move well. Okay, I made that first try. I failed that a lot, and I really should just throw the gnome across first so that I can, like, pause and do spell tech, but I'm a bit stubborn and I insist on not doing that. So what we're trying to do here is basically this gnome, which we can stand on. It's sort of abnormal in this game, but there are 3 in Bicorn that allow you to do that. And then if it rotates Harry in the right direction and we have the right placement, then we can just get to the other side of that door without having to unlock the door as you're intended to do. So hopefully if my placement works here and I get lucky with the direction that the gnome goes, then we can just go to the other side. If the gnome rotates in the wrong direction, there's not really that much that I can do on that attempt. Technically, it would be possible to, like, steer the gnome into the correct place to get the clip here, but that's a little bit difficult, especially with this first one. That was a rotation in the right direction, but it means that my placement was slightly off since it didn't work. So, another little detail related to actually what Coney asked in the chat, why I put the gnome up there. I don't need to put the gnome up there to be able to pick it up. But why I am putting it up there is to lure it off so that when it falls and I pick it up, the gnome is facing in a specific direction, which is approximately a good direction to have it be facing. Because in terms of doing the door clips, the rotation doesn't actually depend on which way the gnome is facing, but whether the gnome kills you after it starts moving is a bit influenced by the rotation. Ideally, I would want the gnome to be facing directly into the door here, because then a good rotation is if the gnome turns to the left, and then I can go through. If the gnome is facing basically away from the door, and then it turns left, that means it's going to move forward, and while I might be clipped in, if I don't move fast enough, it's going to clip me into the wall, and then I just die. So, ideally I want the gnome to be facing relatively forward, which in this case, it's still technically possible to kill me, and it actually almost did there, but it's only slightly possible with that particular positioning. So now we have to do basically that same thing again with this gnome. This is not very good positioning, but hopefully we'll live with it. These pixies are going to be annoying. I'm just going to let them bite me. So yeah, hopefully this gnome does not kill me. Okay, it just went in the totally wrong direction, which is fairly safe. And now that I've knocked it off here on the bridge, it's facing in the ideal direction for the next attempt. So, usually this should get through in only a few tries. This one, the positioning is a bit more lenient than the other one. I have no idea why, and we got through now. So now just kind of ignore the crabs and the ectoplasm and go through to the end of the level. And I don't know, I guess I was positioned wrong or something there because I wasn't able to boost. So that was presumably my fault, but I don't actually know specifically what happened there. And now we are walking to the dueling club section of the game. So, dueling club, the spells work a bit differently than in the normal game, but we still count them as spells for the sake of the run. And yes, one thing that is sort of irrelevant to the run, but you might see if you watch pretty much any of my PBs, is that you're not supposed to be able to jump during dueling, but it's actually technically possible to jump on like the first frame of it, which you saw there. And then I did this little trick in dueling where basically you cast Expelliarmus and then pause, and then you just get this weird sort of stuck state where you have the auto shield, and then it only takes a single cast to do the dueling. And in that case, Malfoy was relatively cooperative and used Rictus Semphras, which are a lot more effective at removing his health and getting past the dueling. I had one attempt relatively recently where he did like 10 Mimblewimbles in a row, which was very annoying because that just loses time pointlessly. So now with that Expelliarmus trick, we're up to 15 spellcasts. And we are entering the next spell learning section of the game where we're going to learn the Defendo spell. We have another riveting spell challenge here where I just have to press some arrow keys, DDR style.
It's about to move its way around the shape. When the pointer passes directly
Defendo is actually one of the spells that you use the most in this game, because a lot of the stuff that you use Defendo on is pretty much just not really avoidable.
Round one, go.
So, now that we have, well, in a minute or so, once we have learned it, it will be fairly useful. Though we don't actually have that many spells in the near future. We're coming up on a point soon where we will be spending a lot of time without doing any spells, but we have a few more to go before getting there. Well, 2 more to go. Let's see if I get a Defendo fake input. less common than Scourge, but still happens
Well
sometimes.
done, Harry. You've moved on to the next level of the lesson. 10 points to Gryffindor.
Wow, so
Round
many
3,
house points.
Go.
Yeah, once we're in Defendo, the ending section of the challenge is pretty much right there at the starting section, roughly. So using the brightness boosts that you do in a normal run, you can pretty much just get straight to it the same way that you would in a
15
warpless
points to
run.
Gryffindor.
So we'll see here, there's branches in your way, but you can just walk through there, so it really doesn't matter at all. It's kind of comical how easy that cast is to skip. Like, even a casual player would likely skip that if they felt like it. Going to jump into this little ledge here and boost up, and this is the ending area of the challenge. Now I'm going to try to boost over the trigger that spawns a snail here, and that was successful. Even if I'd failed, it would be possible to manipulate the snail into the little trap where it's supposed to go, but it's faster to just skip doing that altogether. And now I have to get these 2 snails into this trap. Fun fact, if you get them in too close to the same time, it actually doesn't count as triggering both, and then you need to get a 3rd snail in. I've done that before in a run. It's not the greatest way to save time, but ideally if you manipulate them correctly, that shouldn't ever happen. So now, out of Defendo, we're going on to Boomslang, which is a very short level, but unfortunately the areas around the entrance, both leading into and starting in the level, have some branches covering them, which there's basically no way to get around except using Defendo. Actually, I don't remember. You might be able to, like, clip through those branches using a mushroom and a frog, maybe? I don't remember if that actually works or not, but even if that does work, it wouldn't save any spell casts. Okay, I didn't boost quite well enough there. Or that time. And now I'm up. Drinking my potion just because there's an upcoming trick where I could potentially overboost. Not very likely, but I have a ton of potions to spare, so I might as well be safe. So now we're going to the supposedly weekly house point ceremony that happens 4 times in the year. And then once we get past that, we will have Dumbledore Skip, which doesn't actually save any spellcasts, but it saves a lot of time, so we're doing it the same way that we would do it in, say, an any % run or a warpless run. So, pretty much what is supposed to happen at Dumbledore Skip, you encounter the petrified ghost Nick, and get into an unskippable cutscene. If I do this correctly... Okay, I did not do that correctly. I got a long ledge grab, but I still made it up. So that is why I drank my potion earlier, because occasionally I make mistakes like that. But yeah, we just boosted and avoided actually getting stuck in that unskippable cutscene. So now we are not going to cast another spell for quite a while in this run. We're entering the Goyle level, where some people in chat may have an idea of what's going to go on, but basically I'm going to be spending a very long time pushing a Bowtruckle to a specific location. I'm changing to high graphics because I'm going to need that later on at the end of this. I don't really need it quite yet, but might as well. Let's see. So I'm going to pull this Bowtruckle about to the limit of the range where it's intended to go, and then I'm going to get it a little bit further with a charge. And that's about as far as you can normally bring the Bowtruckle, but someone in chat currently, Coney, discovered that you can in fact push Bowtruckles further because they have a behavior where basically after they hit Harry doing the weird little hug thing, they move slightly backwards, so you can just keep pushing it to get further and further, and we will eventually have a use for this at the right location. Now, if there's anything like a donation, or if you have like 100 donations to read, now would be a good time. Otherwise, I guess I will go on a rambling explanation of the history of this level's route, since it's the most interesting thing I can come up with to say while we're spending like 15 minutes just pushing this bow truckle.
There sadly are not any donations, but of course, as ever, if you guys do choose to donate, I will be reading it out live on stream. I'll be with you hosting the rest of the day, plus of course doing the outro. So if you want to hear Miney read your donation, then, or I mean, hey, I'm just gonna say, if you want to hear Ratburn read your donation, you could always ask for that. I mean, I don't know. But yeah, I am the host for the rest of the day. So if you want to hear Miney read your donation, then you can. Just to know, all the VODs for this event will be going up on YouTube shortly after the event is finished. I'm currently in the background making highlights and working on things. They're mostly all done, so they'll all be going up this evening, ready for runners to submit any PBs or world records they've achieved across this event. And we've had a few, which is really cool to see. But yeah, tell us a little bit about the history of this level.
Yeah, I guess before I get too far into that, I'll just mention it's obviously this is one of the locations where I've prepared a save state in case I fail. Like, if I fail, this is not a place where I'm going to try again just because of how long it takes. There are a few ways I could fail. I mean, I could just, like, slip my fingers off the keyboard and let the bow truckle go, and then it's just over as quickly as that. There's also some weird behavior on the stairs occasionally. I think, if I remember correctly, the bow truckle has, like, a specific scripted reaction to hitting a wall, and I think occasionally it sort of hits against the stair step similar to a wall, and that can make it behave sort of differently, and it's a bit easy to lose it if that happens, but that's relatively rare, so hopefully that shouldn't happen. And also, as a note, there are 2 bow truckles in this level. I specifically selected the one that starts further away from the stairs, which actually takes longer to push up the stairs, but it's the one that works for the setup that I'm going for the trick that it's used for. The other one is also usable, but it requires a different setup that I am very much not good at. I think is harder overall, but 3 bow truckles. I mean, I'm talking about 2 bow truckles in this particular area, but yes, these aren't the only bow truckles in the map file. There are other ones that are not exactly accessible to us here. So I guess to give an overall idea of sort of the history of this level, slightly before I first started running this level, the typical way of doing this in Lowcast took 5 casts. I'll give sort of a voice description of how you go through the level. If you're familiar with the level, it might be relatively obvious to you, because with the version of the route at that time, it was pretty much just 5 spellcasts, and anyone who knew the basic strats of the game at all could very easily have figured out how to get it down to those 5 spellcasts, because you can just do normal boosts to get past most things. So right here you see a block. You can do a flipendo on that, and then it gets you into position where you can boost under the arch and then go up there, and then you can continue past a spiderweb there. So then you can just walk around the spiderweb, and that gets you to 1 cast, and you'll enter into this room where there's like a fireplace, but you don't really need to do anything there, so you just continue. And then you go up some stairs, and you enter a little area with a giant fire crab. But the fire crab's on a platform which you can ledge grab, and therefore you can just boost out of it. And then you go past a bunch of other stuff, and then you enter into this weird little library room. Now, in the library room, you can basically walk through, and then you see your way of going through is sort of blocked by this weird chair and a spider web, and you're supposed to cast on the spider web, and then it like releases a bookshelf that lets you keep going. So that would be the 2nd cast of the level in a run of early 2022. And then once you continue from there, there's a little trap where you're supposed to fall and go next to a giant fire crab, but you can just get past that using a normal wall walk that's done in Warpless. so it's not particularly difficult to skip those casts. Then after you get past that area, there's this little puzzle room, but the puzzle is only for like getting chests and stuff, so you obviously just walk past that. Then you go into a sort of dark room with a bunch of ectoplasm, but you can just keep walking through there. Nothing really more to do. And finally, you enter into this weird area which has some like bales of hay and a couple spider webs. Now, once you're in that area, you can basically just do a simple boost to get past the first web by going up through a little gap in some rafters above it. But once you get past that first spider web, you're stuck in an area that has no grabbable ledges, so then you have to cast on the second spider web to get through, and that gets you to 3 casts in the level. Now, finally, once you're past all of that, you're in, like, the attic area of this barn that's near the end of the level. There's another spider web that's supposed to block your way, but you can just walk past it easily enough. And then that brings you to a trap door that you have to do an Alahomora on, which gets you to 4 spellcasts. Then you leave the attic area of the barn and go outside, and then you would go to the end of the level by doing an Alahomora on the main entrance of the barn to get back in, and then you would go touch Goyle to get his hair and leave the level. So that is 5 spellcasts. So, I hope that long audio description gives you a very good idea of what the level is like. So the first cast save that was found, which if you watched the Lowcast run at Potterthon 4 years ago, was the route done then, was using 2 of those areas where it's possible to save a cast. At the little chair and spiderweb in the library, it's actually possible, if you get on a mushroom, to get on top of the chair, and then you can just sort of fall past it on the other side and just keep going. So that was something people were sort of aware of as an option, but then what I noticed as an option there was, okay, you use 1 spellcast to get a mushroom, and you can throw mushrooms at mushrooms to sever more mushrooms and get a lot of mushrooms for free with only a single spellcast. And it turns out that later on, after that chair, once you get into the room with the hay bales and the spider webs, you can make a big tower of those mushrooms using a gnome, of course, and then you can just jump over the second spider web. So the version of the route at that time was basically using 1 spellcast on a mushroom early on and doing a bunch of mushroom transportation and building staircases and such, all the way to get through to save 2 different casts using those mushrooms. So that brought the level down to 4 spellcasts. So, you might have seen that version if you watched this a while ago, but later, after the Lowcast run was around 63 casts at that time, I had done Lowcast for a while, and then I became interested in doing a pixie ride in Defendo, which I practiced for a while, which was, at that time, theoretically the optimal route for the glitchless category. So I spent a lot of time getting that to work. And then someone else found a better strat in glitchless, so I decided, okay, I've spent all this time pixie riding. Maybe I can try to get something useful out of that. So I went into the library, which has this little chair and spiderweb in it, but there's also a pixie in that room. So I decided to spend a bunch of time trying to get a pixie ride to work there. And finally, on, I believe, April 1st, 2023, I actually did manage to barely get a working pixie ride there to get on the chair, which at that point was just a technically faster way of doing forecasts. But after I was thinking about it for a while, after getting that, I thought, well, if we can get over the second web in the hay bale area from a tower of mushrooms, theoretically anything that could get us that height would do. So I looked a little bit into possible different ways of getting the height to go over that spider web. And later that same day, I thought of the idea of carrying the gnome still to that area with the spider web and then bouncing off of its head midair. And somehow, miraculously from a save state, I got that to work after a few attempts, and that brought the level down to 3 spellcasts, and was the introduction of one of the, at times, worst strats of this run. I'm a lot better at it now than I was when I was first trying to do it, and kind of had no clue how to approach it correctly. But after a long while of attempts, I believe I got the first 62 cast run with that 3 cast Goyle using that route, sort of just by luck. I think that run was like 6 hours and 5 minutes, if I remember correctly. So, later on, I had the idea with the last section of the level where you're supposed to enter into the barn, I realized, oh, when you're doing a ledge grab, you actually have smaller collision. There's a little time save here. You can just let the Bowtruckle walk forwards instead of pushing it in that direction, because at that part of the stairs, the direction we want it to go is also the direction it naturally wants to go. Back to the rambling story. So what I came up with is, at the end with the barn, I made another big tower of mushrooms and used it to block Harry's upward movement during a boost, and then just managed to do a boost into the side of the barn to end the level instead of going in through the front door. And then I had this idea, and the very wise Tedder had the better idea of just using the gnome to do that, and that brought the theoretical spellcasts for Goyle down to 2 casts. Now, if you've seen a recent good Warpless run, you might note that you actually don't need to block the boost at all to get into the barn. You can just do that using a different method that curves the direction Harry goes during the boost. And that was found by Coney, and a lot of people do that now, so it would be relatively easy to skip that last cast, but that wasn't the way it was initially skipped at the time. And that brings us to 2 casts, but then there is one more still to go. Basically, that is the one that we are working on now. So what I initially came up with as a way to boost under that arch down there using the block was essentially doing the same thing that I had been doing all along, trying to use a bunch of mushrooms to block Harry's upward movement. And I eventually got that working with a weird convoluted setup where there was like a stack of mushrooms, and also I threw 1 mushroom into the air. Normally, if a mushroom is in the air and it blocks Harry's head, then it explodes, but you can still use that to block the upwards movement for 1 single frame. And that barely worked to allow me to get under the arch. But that didn't actually save a cast because I was still using a mushroom. It just sort of reverted the 2 cast route into using mushroom strats. However, the idea of getting blocked from moving upwards and boosting under that arch ended up getting reused when Coney discovered that you can do this manipulation on the Bowtruckle and move it, and once the Bowtruckle blocks you from the upward movement, you can get that boost under the arch without having to do any mushroom strats. And that brings it down to 1 spellcast for this entire level, which, if you were paying attention to the ones that I said were skipped, is the little trapdoor in the attic of the barn that you still need to do. So that somehow filled up pretty much all of the time of getting up here, so I'm going to try to position this Bowtruckle in the correct spot so that when it walks, it will block Harry's boost in the correct way. So, I'm also going to do a little trick here where I basically drink a potion and then press escape, and then that makes Harry automatically drink potions every time he takes damage. You don't really need that, but I like doing it just so that I don't have to pay attention to drinking potions in this part. I think this setup should be good. Okay, Harry started drinking the potion, which means the Bowtruckle hit him. If I started boosting before the Bowtruckle hit, then I would just get frozen in midair by the damage, but because I do it after, the Bowtruckle is no longer in a damage-causing state, so now it will just block the boost. And ideally, this should work. It, with this resolution, is not the easiest to tell exactly what is going on, but I think this is working. I'm trying to boost basically every frame. I think I saw him under the arch. Yes. So yeah. To be fast, I really should just reload again and do a normal boost at this point, but I like taking the strat extremely safely because it's not exactly a strat that you can just try again in the run. It's dead if you fail at all. So I pretty much only resort to reloading and doing a normal boost if I'm really desperate to save time. Which, in a marathon setting, I am certainly not. That should be good, and now I can go forward here and not hold the wrong keys and go backward, and as I said, you can just walk past that web. And now we are continuing into the rest of the level. Okay, I wasn't looking that closely at chat, which obviously I don't really need to be, but I'm sort of curious because Coney said since when, and I'm wondering if that was referring to something I said, because I don't know. So here's another gnome that I'm going to try to knock out, because as mentioned before, I need it in order to bounce on it midair. The perma potion drinking thing has been known for like years. But yeah, I've pretty much always done that for this strat. And you can disable that by just pressing the potion button again. So here, I'm going to try to do a relatively precise throw to get this gnome up here, and try not to void him on the side. Okay, that worked. And now we are entering the library, where we will do the pixie ride, though it is not nearly as difficult of a version as the initial one that I found a long time ago, because I found a better way to do it. But it's still an area that I choke on a lot, so it's possible I could lose a lot of time here, but we'll see what happens. Basically, the current version of the route here is luring the pixie until it gets tired and decides to go back home, and then we just ride it back home instead of manipulating it using Harry's position. Okay, failed there, but can just load and try again. Yeah, you have to... I think it only works if you do it relatively quickly after pressing the potion button, but I don't know what exactly the limits of the timing are. There are a few other things in the game that also have that sort of weird effect if you pause right after doing them. Like, you can do that to get auto cutscene skip for, like, a single level until you load into a new one, pretty much. But it doesn't really help that much with anything. So now we used the pathing strat with the pixie to get onto this candle here, but we still have to get slightly further over to actually get onto the chair so we can get past. I'm trying to let the pixie get fully to the lowest height it can here so that it can work ideally. And then I also want to sort of manipulate the phase of its AI that it's going to be on when I start here. Okay, I fell off too early, so I didn't make it to the chair. We'll try that again. So yeah, this is something that I have a tendency to, like, fall out of practice of way too easily if I don't do it, like, constantly. I do have a save prepared here for the candles, but I really hope I don't have to use that one, because this is not really a strat that I should be failing for very long. So yeah, the older version of this strat basically was just doing a free ride on the pixie the entire way from that table to the chair, and it involved a sort of barely usable manipulation that makes the pixie lower in height while you're riding on it. But I only got that once in practice and once in a run ever, and I've never done it out of those 2 times. It's a lot more difficult than this version. So, if anyone's interested in running Lowcast, I would strongly recommend doing this version, and not that obsolete, much harder one, obviously. So yeah, this level is kind of the most notorious one of the entire run, given obviously the very long strat we just saw, and then this one, which is moderately difficult, and then the upcoming gnome bounce, which is relatively hard to get good at. Okay, nice. Now I just have to not fail this wall walk here, which would be pretty bad. Good. Okay, that wasn't too long. I'm just going to take it safe and not go anywhere near that pixie. I'll do the same with this one, which luckily is already going in the opposite direction, and then I'll wait for it to come back this way. Thankfully, there's a save up there. Oh my god, how did I not jump there? That is, like, the worst mistake. I've never done that before. Okay, well, hopefully I can get this quickly again. That was a weird position with the pixie there. Yeah, I have a lot of time set aside for this level in the estimate, so that shouldn't be too bad unless I get really stuck. Yeah, back here. Wow, I can't believe I just, like, didn't press the jump button. That's... wow. Hopefully I will not make that mistake again for the next few years, as I haven't made it for the past few years. So, just chilling, waiting on this pixie to get slightly lower by a few units from when it first approaches us on the candle. That was bad. So yeah, as I mentioned before during the Bicorn Pixie ride, basically when you're bouncing on it, the pixie is going to be trying to reach Harry and go upwards in order to do that, which in this case, with a room with a comparatively low ceiling, is really annoying because it just means you kind of get stuck against the ceiling with the pixie, and then it ends up pushing you out. So keep trying to do this for a few more attempts before I give up, which I don't want to do, but if I keep failing, then I will do. Yo. This is something I really should be practicing more, honestly. Okay, nice. Back to the candle so we can do it all over again. This is a really great view of the wall here. You can see all of this wonderful room. I guess I'll give it this last try from here, and if I fail this time, then I'm just going to use the save from the candle until it works. Also, for reference, the incentive is only for each location, not like if I need to use the save multiple times at the same location. Otherwise, I would be piling on a little bit too much. Okay. So I'm just going to not do that repeatedly. Let's see. That is not the right save at all. Let me die here and load from the other save. Yep. For reference, I have like a script in another window where I'm making it move the save to the location that corresponds to where I want it to be. So that is the right one. So we're up to $40. That almost worked. At this point, I'm just kind of failing it out of nervousness for no reason. Okay, now we are past there again, and this time I will try to not randomly fall in the ectoplasm room. Because we are coming up on the truly most exciting trick of the run, which is usually one of the sort of make or break points. I'm just going to take things real slow in this room and try not to risk anything. But yes, the gnome bounce is coming up, so you will get to see what that entails exactly. Okay, good. I did not randomly fall again. Oh, let's see, do I have this set up? Well, I do now. So what we're going to do is boost up to that location and then throw the gnome in the air and try to bounce on it. Basically, this relies on a weird thing where if Harry is kind of stuck in between these rafters with his collision a bit messed up, and then you enable auto jump, it pretty much allows you to automatically do this jump that would otherwise be kind of impossible to do. Let's see if I can get the right positioning set up here. And then another thing I'm going to do is if you reload at the right position above the gnome in the air, Harry just sort of snaps down and bounces on it immediately. So let's see if that works now. Okay, first try. Nice. If I had known I was going to get that, I could have gone a bit longer with trying to get the pixie strat, but nice. That is the one cast that we are actually supposed to do in this level, and that brings us up to 18 casts. So now, going to do the modified version of this boost invented by Coney, which people now also do in Warpless, and I did not do it correctly. So that's unfortunate, but basically just curving the boost a little bit to get under this and get inside the barn here. And now we are done with Goyle, the most notorious level of this run. And now we are about to move on to Slytherin, which is the site of the most recent cast save, or actually 3 casts saved at once, but we'll see what that level looks like. For now, I was drinking a potion there just as a sort of setup, because we need damage going into Slytherin. I just like to get that in a consistent manner by having full health now, and then taking the damage while falling down the stairs. it's not really necessary to do that. If I already have damage, I could just go down the stairs in a way that doesn't take damage, but I am very flush with potions, so I might as well just keep the consistent route. So for now, we are Goyle, and we're going to the Slytherin Common Room. Not really any casts that would be on the way, so not much to do in these sort of walking segments usually. We're going to have a couple cutscenes on the way, including an unskippable one right before entering the Slytherin Common Room. So here's the one where we see the Slytherin entering the Common Room, and we use that to learn the password. It's very riveting, which I guess it's so exciting that the devs decided you aren't even allowed to skip it. But yeah, what we're going to do in Slytherin is, I guess we'll see very soon. We have a few spellcasts coming up. The first major area with a lot of spellcasts in a while. You can cast on the statue. You can actually aim at this little block below first. If you could somehow hit that, that would save a cast, but there isn't any space, so that's kind of just impossible. And then we have 2 more casts on these ropes here, and now we are going to use these gnomes and basically construct a little ladder in there where we bounce up the gnomes to get into a wall walk in order to get up. And knocking these gnomes out is kind of annoying because they're all here at once and get in the way of knocking each other out. So hopefully I can get one knocked out relatively promptly. Okay, good. I'm intentionally letting them hit me while I'm walking to the knocked out one so they don't hit me while I'm picking it up. So that's just... it's a bit annoying if they hit you while picking it up and then just make you drop it again. Okay, so I'm trying to position the first one by using positioning on the floor and then dropping it by drinking a potion. That should be a good position, and it's just going to sort of awkwardly hang there because that's the way it works, I guess. Now, the second one, as soon as I can actually pick this gnome up, I'm going to... this gnome has the moves, and then knocks himself out inside the hole, which is not very helpful to me, but guess we can just wait for him to wake up and then hopefully knock him out in a useful way. One thing that's fun about this run is it's technically possible once you reach a gnome hole that the gnome can just like randomly during its time in the map have gotten itself permanently knocked out inside, and then it's literally just unusable and the run can't continue. That's pretty rare, but I did have it happen in Rick2 one time recently. Let's see, is this position good? It's slightly too high. Yeah, I mean, Rick2 is by far the least bad level to have that happen in, so it was nice that it only happened there. It's still slightly too high. Yeah, that gnome at the end of Goyle has that a ton, but that's because that one has, like, the weird thing, like, blocking it from leaving until you're there, which sort of interferes. But thankfully we don't need that gnome for anything in the current route. So let's see if I can actually place this gnome in a position that works for the ladder. It's still too high. I'm just getting it, like, slightly too high. It's also possible with the positions you throw this gnome into that it can just be, like, not in the wall enough and then just, like, gradually slips out and falls to the floor, which is one annoyance with setting this up. That is not the right angle, I guess. Okay, I'm hoping that is not a slipping position. I don't think it is. It's actually possible that sometimes the gnome is slipping, like, absurdly slowly, and the position works for, like, multiple minutes, but then it just eventually slips too low and no longer works. There are a lot of weird hang-ups in this run, if you haven't noticed. Technically, you only need 2 gnomes to get this strat, but it's generally easier with the third one. So, I'm going to hope that when throwing this one, I don't accidentally throw it under the middle one, because then it would knock it out of its position, and I would have to restart, which is really annoying when that happens, so I'll try not to do that. Let's see. Okay. That position was a bit too high to actually bounce on. I still could have gone for the other way of doing it, but that's a bit of a weird position to land in. This is surprisingly one of the things that I'm, like, worst at setting up with this resolution that I'm less used to playing on. For the 2 gnome version, it's really annoying to get it if you only have 2 in the wall walk. It's actually easier to do it if you have, like, 2 and then the third also blocking you, so you can kind of use it even if the third gnome is too high. But if you only just have the 2, then normally it ends up being really annoying because you just fall off too easily. Like, I might as well try to show it off here. We'll see if I get lucky. It's probably better than if I just accidentally misplaced the 1. So we'll see if this works, and it doesn't look like the top one is waking up, so if it doesn't work after a while, I can just place it in a different position. So yeah, basically I'm hoping to land in a wall walk from which I will jump onto the top of one of those statues there, and then jump up slightly higher to some other collision, and then get another wall walk to get all the way up, instead of doing what you're normally supposed to do, which is casting on the statues so that it activates the elevator. Is this even the right angle? I think I got my angle messed up somehow. This angle should be good. Let's see. So yeah, if you have really good gnome positions, this can actually, like, not be very RNG, and it happens really quickly, but if your positions are less than ideal, then you kind of have to wait to get lucky, which is what I'm doing for a little bit right now. We'll see how this works out. Please bounce in the right direction. Please, gnomes. I hope I don't have to resort to the save state for this one, because I was checking them this morning, and the one I made actually isn't very good. So it might take a while even if I do, but we'll see. I mean, it shouldn't take that long, but, like, it might take a few more minutes than would be ideal from my perspective. So yeah, this is why the 2 gnome version is a lot worse. It just kind of mostly takes a long time to get it, so I wouldn't really recommend intentionally going for the 2 gnome version. Give it slightly longer. Yeah, I mean, I can Sometimes if you put the top gnome in the wrong position, he wakes up, and then you can't reposition, but luckily, in the current state, I can. The main thing I'm just worried about is if I throw it wrong, and then it lands under the middle gnome, and messes the whole thing up. But I'm going to try repositioning. I mean, the bow truckle boost is legitimately, at least with the setup I use, it's not one of the hard strats at all. It just takes an absurdly long time. This is... Let's see, is that a good position? Somehow that's still too high. Yeah, I don't really know how to get the angle well with a setup here currently on this resolution. That was a bit dangerous. For the bow truckle boost with pressing left, I mean, like, what I'm doing is I press... Oh, I got him just before he just before he woke up there. Yeah, I do rapidly press the key in between while I'm pausing and unpausing, and then I keep it held. This is annoying. Yeah, it's just, like, quick timing for pressing the key. This, I really hope this is good, and it's not. But we have a bit of time left for this. World record finishes in less than 6 minutes, by the way. A much better run than this current one. This angle is annoying to get right, especially because, like, the lower gnome juts out of the wall a different amount, depending on exactly how it got thrown in, so I can't really always line up the same angle. I'm just gonna hope that works, and if it doesn't, then whatever. Well, he woke up, so that is a really bad position if he wakes up and walks off. Please work. This is annoying. Okay, whatever is the next one I get that actually works, I'm going to try, and if that fails, then I will just use the save state, I guess. I guess I'm probably slightly too far back then, if that's happening. I have no idea if that's a useful position at all, to be honest. Let's see what happens. Okay, I guess that is seemingly a position that I can bounce on at least. So hopefully that will work here. Like, this should be a good enough position to get the strat. At least assuming I have the right angle. Yeah, it's bouncing some. So yeah, I want to be, like, against the wall when I'm bouncing, but obviously the bounces are random. That should be good. And somehow it didn't work. I'm trying to do a thing where basically if you have auto jump enabled and you do this like reload thing, you just like automatically get full speed on the jump. I guess my angle was probably slightly wrong there, maybe. Yeah, we'll see if I can get a wall walk again relatively quickly. I think this angle is the correct one though, so... Please bounce in the right direction. Let's see. So yeah, I'm doing some like leftward movements and also double forwards to try to get it to get into the wall walk at the right time. I don't know how loud my keyboard is on the mic, but I'm kind of pressing keys a lot. That looked close. That also looked close. It's audible, that's fun, but not surprising. That almost looked like it was going to do the right thing, but then it didn't. Is my angle correct? Did my angle change somehow? That's weird. I shouldn't have pressed anything that could have changed it. I'm pretty sure that's a bad position, which I should have just not moved at all and kept the angle, but whatever. Let's see. Go a bit longer because this position really could work. Oh, this is not good. This is kind of bad. Which is the same thing as not good. Because if I do the auto jump thing, I'm probably going to end up grabbing the gnome, but I'm going to try it anyways. And if it fails, then I guess I'll just use the save state. Yep. Okay. I'm just going to reload here, and this should be guaranteed to have the right angle, so that, unfortunately for me, but fortunately for Charity, gets me up to 60. Okay, that position should be good. I guess it wasn't quite good enough. Or my angle wasn't quite good enough. Give this a few more attempts. Hopefully I will get one with the correct angle soon. Or get one into the wall walk from here soon. And get onto the statue. Not quite, not quite. This is theoretically not a slow strat, but obviously I'm not showing it off very well here. But I managed to actually get a valid Votricle boost, because that's, I guess, good looking. Let's see, does this work? Nope. To be honest, I don't remember what the audio is like. I don't think there should be like the repeated audio on the good version, but I also don't normally listen to the game audio, so I don't really know. What do you mean Miney's not playing? I'm just on commentary. Like, obviously these are Miney's inputs, gameplay. I don't know what you're talking about.
Yeah, I'm definitely playing, guys. What are you on about? Jump, 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 jump. See, you hear my spacebar? Actually, don't think you can.
Yeah. This is obviously the most exciting part of the run here. Please get the wall walk. If this doesn't work soon, I will... I don't know, I might use like debug mode or something to get on top, but I really would prefer not to do that. Okay, now that is an interesting result, but it should work. And we are up. So now I just need to get into the right wall walk to actually get all the way up. Which hopefully I will not mess up. I did mess up, but not in an unrecoverable way. There are multiple ways you can get up, and the way I'm doing this is kind of the worst way, but it's the one that I remember how to do. And we're up. So that was that strat, and it took quite a bit longer than it really should, but I guess you got to see it. And that is not how you do bridge skip, which is not a Lowcast strat, that's just a normal strat that I'm not very good at. But we'll keep going and actually get it. And, okay. Only fell down once. That's far from the worst I have ever done at bridge skip. So yeah, this run is a bit behind what my estimate was for Slytherin, but oh well. There's the 23rd cast. Somehow I cast that spell so low, I almost thought it was going to go into the floor, but thankfully it didn't. And now, there's not really anywhere else you would be expected to cast here, unless you're going for, like, secrets and stuff that obviously we don't go for. Just kind of have to close out the level at this point. Which involves us walking over to where Malfoy is, and then transforming back and doing the very thrilling escape from the Slytherin common room. yeah, if a spell misses, that still counts as a cast, so obviously I would have just reloaded from the save and it wouldn't have really mattered, but it would be mildly annoying. So now we're just running out here, and we're about to enter the final spell learning of the run, which is Spongify. Now, I mentioned fake inputs on the other ones. It's very rare in Spongify to the point where if I got one, it would kind of be one of the most exciting things about this run. So we probably are not going to get one. We'll just boost up there and enter the final class and do one more DDR segment. Spongify is also a level in this run that we, for quite a while, thought that there was no way to skip one spellcast, but currently it is at 0 spellcasts. So initially, when I first started running this category, there was a single one where you cast on the Spongify tile and then jump up and boost to the end of the level. And even back then, that was literally the only time in the entire run that you would cast Spongify. It's pretty easy in this game to just complete the whole thing without Spongify. I mean, you need speedrun strats, but as far as speedrun strats go, it's not that complicated to do a Spongify-less run, because even on the old version, you could just warp out of the level instead of actually doing the Spongify to complete it. The first strat that was actually discovered to complete Spongify castless was a gnome bounce, similar to the one in Goyle, except it's way, way worse than that one, and nobody has ever done that strat in a run, because thankfully a different thing was found that is about 1,000,000 times more possible. So we will not be doing that basically unusable strat, but if you ever feel like running glitchless Lowcast, it's still the optimal strat for that one. So yeah. If anyone thinks that not being able to do glitches would avoid doing complex things in Lowcast, you would be wrong, because it makes it way, way worse, actually, in most aspects.
Great work, lad. You've completed all of the
Wow, I completed all the exercises.
15 points to Gryffindor.
Okay, now we're entering the short Spongify challenge. Let's see. I didn't jump over that cutscene. That's a small time save, which I don't actually know the positioning to jump, so I just kind of do it randomly sometimes, because it doesn't really matter for this category. Okay, that gnome knocked himself out. Now let's see if I can jump into this wall walk. Then I'm going to do the auto jump thing again, and we will be out of the level. So yeah, that's a pretty quick level. Now we have kind of a long segment of not really doing anything Lowcast specific. I'm just going to go into the Hagrid cutscene and watch that exciting lore, I guess. But yeah, we can... like, there's nothing in this particular part of the game where even casually you would need to use a spell. Yeah, just kind of following Ron. Obviously, we can't use the Spongify tiles that are on the floor, because we don't want to cast spells. That was a bit high of a boost, but not high enough that I took damage, thankfully. So yeah, at this point, if you were in a normal run, you might use Spongify instead of doing boosts to get up to places, but since we don't want to cast spells, we're just continuing to do the boosts that everyone else does early in the game. And now, that trick in Spongify was the last place where there's any use for auto jump, so I'm going to disable this while I use a reload and have the game running in the background. Also going to change to medium, just because it's fun to use all of the different texture levels in the run. And also because I'm used to playing Forest on medium, because for some reason, when I was first trying to find setups for one of the strats, I was on medium in debug mode. So, yeah.
Come on.
Exciting.
Least Hogwarts can do is make sure
Look
the thing
at
that killed
the
that girl is slaughtered.
great face of Tom Riddle, I guess. and of
Stand
Hagrid.
aside.
And now we are about out of this cutscene, and then we'll be going into the forest level. A fun fact about this game, which you might see with the New Game Plus, is you can actually just, like, enter forest right at the beginning, but the only reason you can't complete it is because you don't know the spells necessary to complete the game from there. So, if we found a way to skip every single spellcast starting from forest, then we would just be able to enter forest right after Willow and skip most of the game. And that would probably become the any percent route in that case. And it probably wouldn't be the Lowcast route because we would probably still be using the Warpless equivalent category and not allow that, I guess. But that's kind of speculation over a very unlikely scenario. Okay. Now we are in forest. So I don't have a whole lot of time to spare given how much I lost in Slytherin, so hopefully I will play forest well. But yeah, for now, we did a boost and just kind of jumped around there. We have cast number 24 here for this bridge. It's supposed to collapse, but we can just go and jump over here. This web, you can just walk past it if you walk correctly, which I didn't at first. 2 more casts because you can't do the same for those webs. Now here, I'm going to walk down into a wall walk on this giant tree and then try to jump around here. These 2 casts can't really skip, so that brings us up to 28. Now I'm positioning my angle here so that I can get into a fairly precise wall walk here, which also requires precise timing for changing the inputs, so I'm going to kind of pause and unpause rapidly to try to get into the right position there. If I can actually not get stuck on the lower thing that blocks me from moving up. Nope. That was not good. Let's see this. Okay. You can see under the menu, Harry moved up a bit there, and now I can just clip up like this, and that avoids casting on that web. And then one more here, brings us to 29. I'm going to try to lag jump across this. And I barely made that. That was close, but I did make it. Other than the lag jump, you can also just boost across that, so there are multiple ways to get through there. Can't really skip that. You can boost way up to the top of the stuff there, but then there's just like walls separating the different parts of the level, so you can't actually use that to avoid just going through the branches the way you're intended to, unfortunately. Now we're just going to use the tops of these trees to get close to the end of the level. Let's see, I'm still at 20 potions, so that is way more than I realistically actually need at this point, but it's a nice level of safety. And we can just walk over here, and then near the end of the level we're going to fall down and sort of land on a little wall walk midway in the fall that allows us to survive. And then land on these branches, and one more spellcast to get into the Aragog boss fight. Now here,
My children.
let's see. Okay, that was odd. I'm just going to die and start the level again. But basically, I want to get up onto that area so that I can walk on some invisible walls to get to another area that allows me to do a trick using a bunch of the spiders. Okay, that got up. So yeah, I'm walking on invisible walls here, and then I need to wait for some spiders to come over. Used to do the long way the other way around to get the spider stuck, but that's kind of slow, ideally. So I'm going to try to shepherd these spiders in a good way here, but it gets moderately annoying with all of these spiders in the same location. I think that should be the correct angle. Let's see if I can get it. Not quite. So yeah, this is probably the point where Coney is going to yell at me for not buffering this, which is honestly correct, but whatever. I'm still not doing it right now because I don't like it.
Bite him, my children.
So yeah, I'm sort of waiting for... This is a weird position. I don't like this position, but I'm going to try. Yeah, the spiders have weird phases, so it sort of switches between the phase where it like moves normally and the phase where it just kind of rotates. Let's see, if it's in the rotation phase when you try to do this trick, then it ends up being kind of annoying. So, usually if I have the spiders in this position like this, then getting it up there should get the correct position, and then I just need to get the correct angle, which should be somewhere around here. And then also the correct timing, which I don't have at the moment. So yeah, there are a lot of ways that you can just kind of get stuck here also, and then have to reload, which is annoying. But yeah, if you land in the right spot, Harry just kind of is infinitely falling and has no way to move. Oh, I was too eager there and tried to jump during the wrong phase of the spider, and it didn't work at all. See, I'll just wait out to try to get the right angle here. I'm not timing correctly at all because I'm always doing this. And we are up. Okay, that was relatively good compared to what I estimated. Here, there's this weird trigger you can cast Defendo at, and it doesn't actually hit the trigger, it just kind of keeps going, but it lets you do this and start the actual boss fight. And fun fact, you can actually cast at Aragog even while you're just standing up there, but you can't get crits, so you need to start the fight in order to actually do it efficiently. And to explain the trick you saw, which I didn't really do while going for it, it's similar to a super jump in HP1 if you were watching one of those runs earlier, but basically they sort of patched super jumps in HP2, but what they didn't do is account for the case where the thing clipping is the thing Harry's standing on instead of Harry himself. That should be at 40 casts there. So we essentially did a weird little super jump just conveyed through the spider instead of directly by Harry. So now it is time to enter the chamber. I mean, kind of just a hallway here. The fling is the last sort of super major thing, though there are still a couple notable strats left. I mean, I don't know the details of what the trigger is on, but like, obviously the Defendo isn't what you would normally cast at Aragog, but you cast the Defendo and it hits something, which is roughly in the vicinity. Now here is another crab that we can manipulate in the same way as the ones early on in Bicorn. This time it's 4. What I'm going to do is, because there's a long fall there, which you're supposed to use Spongify, but I'm just going to try to bounce on a crab in midair while falling down in order to make it so that I don't take the full height of the fall damage. And assuming I get the timing correctly, then I will just land on that torch down there and survive. The older way to do this level, which you might have seen in previous runs, was to just get 2 health bars, which also works but takes a while. I think that should be good. Nope, that was just barely not good enough. Okay. But yeah, there's also an actually technically better way to do this level, which is by boosting backwards, but that's very difficult and not particularly easy to do in a real run. but that would technically be the fastest way to do this. You could kind of boost backwards onto the platform and make it start moving downwards. Which I intend to actually incorporate that into the run eventually, but it's kind of really annoying in the ways that I've currently tried to do it. So yeah, let's see if I can get this time. I don't usually fail this, but it stage fright. So I'm trying to get the crab into like a position where it's just barely still standing on here for the setup. And it's standing on here honestly a bit more than I would want, but let's see. That was literally the right timing. I just overshot the crab for no reason. Like, I jumped past it instead of landing on it. Okay. Hopefully this try will work. Unless I keep failing this, we should be, like, very close on with the estimate, which is kind of amazing. I'd love to say that I did that intentionally, but I didn't. It just kind of worked out as it has so far. Yeah, there are other ways to set up this particular trick. That is not the right thing at all. And I haven't really bothered learning the other ways because I kind of intend to switch to doing the backwards boost. But theoretically, the other ways are easier, at least some of them. I think there's one way that you can actually, like, get the crab sort of stuck in a position where you don't need to time it at all, but that way requires manipulating the crab really slowly. So obviously we wouldn't do that in a run that's going for being really fast. See. Okay, don't fall off. Okay, good. I think that might have been too high still. This is not something I normally fail a lot, but whatever. Give it a few more goes. Yo. Let's see this crab. Oh, I guess the fling was the last thing that I had marked as a save state, so I guess... Which ones did I use? I used the Slytherin and the Pixie and Brick 2, so 60 is the final on that, I guess. This better be the attempt that goes well. I miscounted slightly there, unfortunately. Nope, I'm not even letting that go down. It's just bad. So yeah, to give a bit more insight on the backwards boost strategy I mentioned, one older theoretical way of doing that is that a short ledge grab boosts you backwards during part of its animation. That definitely is confirmed to work on 120 FPS, but it's not actually known to work on 60 FPS. However, you can just get a long ledge grab, and the shape of the ceiling will actually push you backwards, so you can just go backwards regardless, even though the long ledge grab isn't really supposed to do that in a boost normally. And you can use that either to boost directly to the platform, or you can boost onto a torch from which it's possible to lag jump onto the platform. So doing one of those is theoretically like the fastest way to do this start part of the level. Okay, finally. That was not my best performance ever, but we are past that. And now we are at Scourge Snipe, which is a pretty normal strat, but if we're doing it, then we have to get it first try, so I need to restart from a save if I fail it. I technically don't need to do it, so if I fail it more than a few times, I might do the backup strat. Yeah. So I'm dying there just because obviously I need to get it first try, or else I'm wasting casts. Okay. The backup is there's actually a grabbable ledge there, and you can just sort of boost and go around and cast on it from the other side of where you're normally supposed to in the intended route. So it's a pretty cool backup. It's sadly not optimal. Here I'm going for chamber jump and failing it, but basically you just jump across here. You can also do a boost instead, but I'm bad at that, even compared to how bad I am at chamber jump, so I didn't do it. This is the second Scourge that's actually truly mandatory to complete any percent. The first one was the one at Scourge Snipe, so those are the only two that are truly required by the game. But you just can't walk through that one, unlike a lot of the other ones. Oh, I forgot that I reopened, so I did not have boosting set up. I'm just gonna let these guys bite me so they go away. Short. Okay, that guy almost moved into position to just, like, block me from boosting up, so I'm glad he didn't. So 12 potions still. Wonderful. Let's see. Here I'm going to use an auto boost to basically get past this whole intended section where you're supposed to, like, push crabs in and stuff. And I just end up all the way up here and basically at the end of it. And now these are the final two spellcasts in the run, 46 and 47. And now we can go down on this wonderful elevator and just continue in the game, which no longer requires any more spellcasts. So here, just stand on this thing if I can do that correctly, which apparently I can't. Let's see. So yeah, and then you can grab and do a boost, or you can just wait for it to push you back up. Then here is a moderately interesting section. There's Boulder Chase. You're supposed to cast on these branches to open the way and get past them, but you can actually just ledge grab and boost over. I'm going to go on a path which lets me just walk into the ledge grabs that I need, but you can also just use any number of ways to get those boosts, and you can just go over them. And funnily enough, the boulder actually destroys the branches and keeps chasing you, which I guess makes sense given that it's a really huge boulder, but it's not really something that you would expect to happen in the way the game is supposed to work, so it's interesting that they did code that in. Now here, normally you would want to cast on that rope, but I'm going to do a wall walk here and then boost through that little sliver in the wall, which is supposed to be rock that gets destroyed by the swinging thing. But because here he is smaller in collision while you're doing a ledge grab, and therefore while you're boosting, you can actually just get through that if you time the boost correctly. And we're inside, and that brings us to the Basilisk fight, which I'm not very good at, but weird energy beams shooting out of swords are not counted as casts in this category, so it doesn't really matter all that much for our purposes. So all that's left to do is to just do this fight casually and then finish the game. So yeah, I'm not doing it 100% casually, since I'm podcasting, I guess, but I'm not exactly good at it compared to what you might have seen in some of the other runs here or elsewhere. This guy's taking a decent amount of damage, I guess. Okay, that should be a 4 cycle, which is fine by the standards of me. And we are coming up on time as soon as I walk into the Great Hall at the end here.
How about a trade, Harry?
Let's see. And time.
GG's.
So, a couple minutes overestimate, but that was surprisingly accurate, to be honest.
Yeah, you're pretty close to it, all things considered.
Late to lose house points, you know.
This house
But yeah, an incredible run, I have to say, and it's a pleasure as always to have challenge runs at Potterthon, which I think Lowcast definitely is. Something I want to mention, because I don't know if we sort of brought it up during the run. Lowcast, the category is called Lowcast. It's not lowest cast. Ratburn's done the optimal route here, but you can do up to 100 casts in your run. So there's certain strategies that you don't like and you maybe don't feel comfortable going for, you can do a run without them. It's, like I say, as long as there's up to 100 casts. And do you know what the average is for an 80% run?
I have no idea what the average is for an 80% run. I don't know, maybe someone else would know.
That high. So, like, you can consider it as a cool challenge. Like, start doing runs and, like, take casts away, do some of the skips. A8 is free, I know that, so it's kind of not 80%, but yeah, cool. But you could, like, you know, do a couple, you know, start dipping your toe in a little bit, taking some of the casts away, some of the more easy ones maybe, and then, you know, maybe you'll quite like it. But it's a really cool run, and I think it's really grown a lot in the past couple of years. Again, definitely recommend Portal's documentary on Lowcast. It's a really well-made documentary by a number of members of the community. Portal's just sort of the lead person on that, but yeah, really lovely documentary that me and Ratburn actually appear at the very start of, which was a bit of a surprise when I watched it for the first time.
Okay.
He told me he wanted to use that clip, just didn't tell me he was going to put it right at the start.
Yep. I have now paid my penance donation for using save states, by the way.
Oh, thank you very much. I will read that quickly before we go to transition. Thank you. What a surprise. Ratburn for the $60 donation to the Trevor Project with no message. But of course, I assume your message would be play Lowcast?
Yes. Yep. And thanks for having me. Bye, everyone. Remember to donate all of your money until you go broke. Just kidding, don't. But do donate if you have money to spare.
Absolutely. We've raised $1,695 so far. As a final reminder into this transition that Skillet's name for Hogwarts Legacy is still open and will be closing after this transition. So if it's not claimed, Skillet will just be playing as whatever he wants. And we can't have that, can we, guys? So $25 to the Trevor Project campaign, and you'll be able to make Skillet have a custom name. The one final thing I wanted to mention before we hit transition, if we manage to raise $1,735, that will match the next event, which is Potterthon 6 on our list. So I think we can get there, guys. And there's some pretty nutty incentives coming up for Legacy. So don't go away. We're right back after this transition where we'll be playing Hogwarts Legacy.